Hi guys, welcome to the Improvement Season podcast. I am your host along with Pascal Floor, Steve Hall. I did that in a really weird way. So how are you doing, Pascal?
I'm good. Am I still behind? Am I still lagging?
The video's good.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So Skype is working perfectly. Nothing is going on there. So yeah, I think it was something with Skype Germany last time because Katie had problems with that as well. So yeah. I'm back. I'm fresh. I'm not 2 seconds behind, no delay, and yeah, Skype is working. So the life is wonderful.
And you're fresh because you just finished a deload, right?
Kind of a deload.
Oh no, you had 3 days or something, didn't you?
3 days where I was out of the gym, and that was it basically. And now I'm back to training because I needed to make it happen for the London seminar and then the holiday afterwards. So I think with that in mind, that there is a decent amount of time where I'm not training, it's absolutely acceptable to then be away from the gym. At least in my hat, it is.
In terms of it was acceptable to do just the 3 days because you know you've got an extended break coming up.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the way I think I would have gone about it as well. It's definitely how I've done it before.
With just thinking about that, yes, fatigue is probably more accumulated on the days right before the time away, but that's all right because I have completely time away from the gym then during that period of time.
So yeah, obviously you just did your deload, so you're coming into within this mesocycle. Are you doing metabolite work, or how are you attacking this one?
No, this time it's just the second mesocycle, which is basically kind of a replicate of the first mesocycle. A small, minute changes here and there. Exercise selection and order a little bit changed due to just a little bit of convenience, because it's so funny when you are setting up your mesocycle, right? Sometimes it's just like you go in there, you didn't really think about the machines in the gym, where they are located. And sometimes it's just more convenient to do a certain exercise combined with another exercise instead of going to one end of the gym and then back again to the other end of the gym, something like that. As an example, the one day I had something with the dumbbells. It is really in the far deepest corner of the gym. There are the dumbbells, and then I needed to do assisted assisted pull-ups on a machine. Right, that was on the other end of the gym, and then I needed to go back again to the other end of the gym to get once again some dumbbells. So it was just like annoying. So I changed it a little bit around on the days and stuff like that. So changes like these, changes a little bit in the volume, and that's what I'm doing basically.
You didn't want to get your neat game.
Nah.
Not about that neat life.
Not now. Not at 5 a.m. in the morning.
How's your calorie intake looking like at the moment? What are they sitting at?
It's funny because ever since I moved together with Katie, I would have assumed that I'm more active, but because I'm not commuting each and every single day, and I'm not having such a long way to the gym in regards to either commuting or walking there, I think my maintenance has gone down quite significantly. This is something I've seen the last time I did a diet break in December, because I've seen that my weight creeped up quite quickly. And I was just at first thinking that it was the initial weight gain of water and glycogen replenishment, but the weight kept creeping up. And I was just thinking, it can't be true that I'm only sitting at the moment at around like 2,800 to 2,900 calories at maintenance. This is so far lower than I've used to do or have in the past. But it also kind of makes sense when I really think about it. Not commuting with the bike anymore as often, and I have to force myself out to actually go for walks. These are planned even now in the maintenance phase, because otherwise I don't get in a lot of steps. And so I was sitting at right around like 2,900 on average when it comes to the calories.
Still not that too much. Bad, but it's not a lot.
But
when you're used to a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. When you're used to eating something like 3,400 to 3,500 and maintaining weight there, it is quite a huge change, actually. That is sometimes a meal.
And What are you tracking steps at the moment? Are you keeping an eye on them?
No, because I'm always walking the same distances. So one big round is around 4,000 to 5,000 steps for me. In the morning when I'm going to the gym and stuff, I most of the time take in 1,000 steps there, and then I go for a small round, which is 2,000 to 3,000 steps. So I know somewhere where my step count lies,
Cool.
which is cool, right?
Yeah.
But this is just possible when you've been tracking for a while.
Yeah.
Before that, and this is how something like intuitive eating or mindful eating actually works as well, in my opinion at least. That you've been doing something like macro tracking and stuff like that for a long time, so that you are aware of what you're eating. And then once again, you can always make the question up, or arguing about whether it is then truly mindful eating or intuitive eating, because you still kind of know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it's not just going by feel, but more so by a conscious decision that you're making, like subconscious eyeballing, so to speak.
Yeah. And the same with the steps, I guess. It's like you kind of know if you're kind of counting in your head a little bit in some ways, I guess, for some people. And
it is really just a really good similarity between that, because now that I'm thinking about it, if I were to be out of my usual environment and habits on a day-to-day basis, let's say I'm going to London, I have no idea how many steps I'm taking in. And the same applies to when you are going on holiday, and before that you've been always intuitively eating or mindfully eating, and now you're going on holiday.
Different
you've
environment.
Never eaten that food before. You have no idea what's inside there. I don't know, sometimes something like oils, right? When you're going to a restaurant, hey, you never know how much the chef is actually making use of something like that. And this is something you can't really taste unless it's like the pizza I had in Rome, which was awful, which was really just swimming in olive oil. That was disgusting. Disgusting. It was basically the worst pizza I've ever had in Rome, Italy. Yeah. That's thing. But that just goes to show, in such a scenario, you can actually taste how much oil they've been using. But other than that, sometimes it's just like you can make the best effort in estimating and eyeballing things. But if you're out of your usual environment and you don't know the foods or the meals or anything like that, sometimes you can just be like back to zero in regards to the estimation game.
Totally. So I guess it's nice, though. It's still a little bit relieving not having to think about your steps at the moment. But it's also interesting to hear that your actual maintenance has come down by 500 calories. Because a lot of people are like, oh, yeah, that's my maintenance. It's always my maintenance. It's like, well, not quite. So, And
I've never had the feeling that I'm actually as active as I was in the past. But now that I'm thinking about it, with my bicycle, when I was still working in an office, I was riding there at least 10 to 15 minutes, then back again 10 to 15 minutes. And then I went out for a walk in my lunch break, all that kind of stuff, right? And doing this on a day-to-day basis, I mean, just riding on the bike for 20 to 30 minutes on a day-to-day basis, besides the normal activity, of course it accumulates, right? And while I was doing this in conjunction then with the evening school where I was also commuting there and stuff like that, it just makes sense that I expended so much more energy during that time, especially when I was in the morning still walking to the gym, which was a 20-minute walk, right? And 20-minute walk back and 20-minute walk to the gym. So, yeah.
There's all these small things add up and you just don't even realize. I completely see that.
How about yourself? What's going on?
Now in my second week of this mesocycle, and I'm really enjoying it. It was nice to have an injection of novelty to kind of get over a lot of what movements had come stale. And I've already noticed, even in that immediate first week, just better pumps. I was getting soreness from barely anything, which was really nice. And I think a lot of people do this where they get into like, they find a movement, they love it, they stick with it for a period of time, and everyone has it where it just starts not feeling as good as it used to. You switch to a new movement and you're like, oh, this is now going to become my staple. And I'm kind of feel like that with some of them now. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it's going to become a staple for a while, but that staple is going to get loose. It's not going to feel so good. And I'm going to have to rotate something else in. But yeah, everything seems to be going pretty well. Happy with what my body composition is looking like at 190 pounds. And yeah, it's just more of the same, more consuming more food. It's interesting. You talk about kind of maintenance and how that changes. Because when I entered the mini cut, I was on 4,000 calories prior to gain weight. And I was gaining at a pretty decent pace, but I had to go up to 4,000. Then I estimated my maintenance to be like 3.5. But then going into the mini cut and coming out, there was no way my maintenance was back at 3.5. It was probably at more like 3.2. And then I'm up at like 3,800, 3,700 and gaining steadily. So it's kind of interesting how maintenance, you're like, the body can be quite reactive. And I think I'm particularly like, my metabolism is quite flexible and plastic in that sense. You start me dieting and it ramps right down. You start me kind of eating more and it starts to ramp back up. Which it's just good to know. And there's other people that are just more like, you start them dieting, they just lose. You start them increasing, they just start gaining immediately. But yeah, everything feels great. I don't think I can think of anything. Last time I was complaining about a bit of a back tweak, but as soon as I started training, for whatever reason, muscles kind of sorted themselves out and I haven't got that back tweak anymore. So everything's feeling pretty spot on. Yeah, Easter weekend this weekend, so I am going to a different environment. I will be training at Bude Gym, which is like the most hilarious gym ever, because it's like you just get a code, you pay for a code, and then you just go in, and it has a hack squat, a leg press, Smith machine, like it has all of these machines and things, but they're all like ancient and they might be out of order. So a little bit nervous about going back and doing that, especially because I have been doing AM and PM workouts. But at least this is only week 2, although I will be doing my week 3 squat session on Monday over there. So I have to figure out how I'm going to try and split up that volume, get it done where I'm not seeing detriments in performance. And again, I'm going to have to use different equipment, potentially completely different. I don't know if they've even got a cable machine there that I can do like upright cable rows, which I've been doing. And for which instance, I just end up, and I know you do this with your clients as well, I think, Pascal, where it's pretty simple for us. We use reps in reserve. We have a number of sets, a rep range. Just use an equivalent piece of machine, hit your rep range for the reps in reserve. You've pretty much done your job. And yeah, it's going to be a bit different. There might be a slightly different resistance profile. It just kind of feels different. I always am just like be on the more cautious side because probably it's going to be a little bit novel to you. You've just kind of accumulated some repeated bout effect, which is kind of aiding against getting so much muscular damage, which is good in some ways. Obviously, it's going to show adaptations and muscle growth. So just be a bit careful and a bit more on the cautious side. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Foods, obviously, whilst I'm at home, my day looks exactly the same. And I know you're very structured and routine the same way. So I, in a sense, know exactly how I'm going to perform on a day because there's nothing left to chance. Whereas this is going to be 3 sessions where there's something left to chance and I can't just go in and know it's going to be a good session. I think this is a difference between someone who's maybe more intermediate and novice versus someone who's more advanced, where we need everything to be in place to have a good session. We can't kind of screw something up and still have a good session. We can't have like, if we know we've had a bad night's sleep, training is going to be impacted. Whereas someone more novice, intermediate, they can probably get away with a bad night's sleep, still have a good session because our room for adaptation is just so much smaller. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it though. I don't see Charlotte's parents very often, so it'll be nice to see them again. Bude is beautiful. I'm sure I'll be having some Bude foods, some Cornish pasties and some, what are they called? Cream tea. Do love a cream tea. Scones are very nice. Jam, scones. Do love a bit of that. And I have been abusing hot crust buns again. Did eat a whole packet the other day because I needed to get the carbs in. And they are brilliant for that.
I'm not the biggest fan of English breakfast or English food in general, but I think people know that.
Have you had a scone before? Like a cream tea? I think you'd enjoy it. It's just like...
No, never had that, I think.
It's like a bread bread product, but it's a bit more fatty. So it's a bit more like not dry at all. So it's like, it's just, and then jam and a little bit of cream. You can't really go wrong. I didn't think I liked it, but this was my old orthorexic self being like, you don't like this sort of thing. It's not good. Whereas I tried it and I was like, oof, this is banging.
But I have it the same when it comes to German cuisine. I hated it when I was younger. Also because maybe it was always something fancy of, sushi or Vietnamese food is exotic. Back in the days, it was kind of something special, right? And I hated German cuisine, and now I fucking love it.
Really?
Is so amazing. Yes, absolutely. It is so good, so good.
Name some. What are your favorite things?
I have no idea what it's called in English. Like Bavarian dishes. So my family is mainly from Bavaria, so I grew up in the northern part of Germany. I see myself as a northern light, right? You can also hear it in my accent. Luckily, because the southern part has not the most beautiful accent, but the majority of my family comes from the south. So Bavarian cuisine and stuff like that. And Bavarian cuisine is so freaking good. So freaking good. And there's something called Rinderroulade. No idea what's it called. It's kind of meat wrapped like in circles around each other with a filling inside. And then like Semmelknödel, it's made out of buns into kind of small balls, which are really squishy and a little bit moist inside.
Like a dumpling type thing.
Kind of like a dumpling, yeah, exactly. And just like typical grains and vegetables along with that, like steamed vegetables or so. Amazing. I don't know.
You'd probably like a Sunday roast then, which is very quintessential British, which is gravy, vegetables, roast potatoes.
Something like Christmas dinner, for example. Yeah. Right? I love it.
Yeah.
This is kind of typical southern German cuisine, like a little bit hefty in regards to calories. You couldn't eat that each and every single day, because I would assume like back in the days, maybe it was because you've been working on a farm or you've been active for the entire day that you needed that amount. But nowadays it's just like, what are you doing? I mean, look at us training, and then the rest of the day we are doing or sitting in front of a computer. But I love food like that. But it changed over the years because, don't know.
I think your taste buds also change, but I think it's an experience thing as well, isn't it? It's kind of like, I don't know, I know for me, I put a lot of foods off limits because I thought they were quote unquote bad. Whereas now it's like, oh, I do like pastry. Damn it. I wish I didn't like pastry.
But I have to admit that I'm still super complicated when it comes to finding something to eat. And Katie is the one that always has to tolerate that. So when we are doing our D-days, so one week or one of the days she is organizing the entire thing, and then it's me again, right? When she's organizing it, it's always a pain in the ass for her to find something to eat because I'm just so picky, and I'm just under the opinion that, I don't know, maybe it is a little bit of a different mentality for you or for our US listeners, but I'm someone who really likes to eat well when I'm going out or going to a restaurant. I really like good cuisines. Like, maybe something like a Michelin star restaurant or so, right? I just love it when it's really good food. However, what I hate, or not hate, but what I'm not really the biggest fan of, is just like a mediocre restaurant where it's just like, meh, yeah, could have done it myself at home for probably a cheaper price.
You're not big on Nando's then?
Nah, it's just like a thing for survival to get food in my system, but that's it, right? I would rather prefer than cooking for myself at home than going to a restaurant. And that's why it's a little bit hard for then Katie to come up with an idea, because I'm so picky, and it's always like, was all right, but nothing special. And
I think a lot of the time when I eat out now, it's a part of the convenience of you're out and it's time to eat, so you need to find somewhere. And then the only other part that's nice is not having to do the washing up, which I don't enjoy.
That's why I'm a big fan of Subway, for example, because it's all right food. Yeah, exactly. If I only want to pick something up to do the job of keeping me satiated and giving me some protein and stuff like that, Subway does a good job. It's cheap. Well, it's not really that expensive. Let's put it that way. But then going to a restaurant and getting something that is not as good as something like Subway, of course, it's a little bit better, but you get the idea, relatively speaking, for the price you're paying. When you are paying something like, I don't know, it's still cheap for Londoners, when you're paying something like 15 or 20 quid for a meal, but it's already quite a lot of money here in Berlin, right? Because you can actually eat really, really cheap and also really well at a low price. So paying for something like 15 to 20 bucks per person and it not being really good, it's already like, come on, guys. Really?
And I can see how that limits the number of restaurants you can eat at, because there's not many that are better than that standard.
That's why she's slowly getting sick and tired of it, and is like, okay, Pascal, what do you want to eat? Come on, just tell me, or pick the restaurant so that we just have that off the table. But yeah, next week we're going to see Avengers Endgame.
Shit, it's out already.
Said, next week, 24th.
Damn.
Mm-hmm.
I need to book a ticket.
Once again, it was the first movie I bought a ticket before it's out since, I can't even remember. I think the last time I've done something like that was when Lord of the Rings came out. And that is already ages ago. I think, what is it now? 15 years or so?
Easy. I think I did it with Star Wars maybe, or something like that.
but pre-buying a ticket before it's even out?
Yeah.
I haven't done that.
But I haven't done it in ages.
Ages. So yeah, hopefully it's good. And once again, I just repeat myself. When Brie Larson, aka Captain Marvel, is the one defeating Thanos, I'm absolutely boycotting Disney, and I'm not going to watch anything in the next 5 years from Disney.
I'll continue to watch because I enjoy it too much.
Can't do it. Especially Brie Larson. If someone is mean to Chris Hemsworth, who seems like the coolest guy on earth, everyone wants to be friends with Chris Hemsworth, and she's snappy to him and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, what the fuck is wrong with you, girl? What the fuck is wrong with you?
I don't know. I'm staying out of it. I don't know the argument. Yeah. Should we get into some questions? I don't think we've got anything else. So the first question is from Mark. I always say his last name wrong.
And he's your client.
I know.
Absolutely no go. Unbelievable.
It's from Mark, my client. There we go. Mark knows I love him. So he said round 3. I guess this is the third question he's asked.
Yeah.
So he said, thanks as always, Steve and Pascal, for your continued dedication and hard work. So my question, it's clear that you're both really passionate about your coaching and take pride in doing it well. But what aspects of coaching do you consider to be the most challenging or even maybe frustrating at times? Thanks again, guys. Good question.
Yeah. I can think of a couple of things, actually. So do you want to go start?
No, you go for it.
Okay, so you leave the floor to me so that I'm actually the bad guy here and embarrassing myself, and you can just agree afterwards, right? Yeah.
Nah, these things never happen. I have no challenges, never get flustered.
Frustrating is... So this is just a personal thing because I value time so highly. When someone is, I at least have the feeling that someone is either not respecting my time or that they are wasting my time. And that is hardly ever happening, right? That is really hardly ever happening. So just want to put it out there as well. But if it's just someone is just treating you as their employee, for example. Yes, they are paying you money to help them and all that kind of stuff. But if they think they can allow themselves everything in regards to the time, in regards to requests they have, that they are not following the rules that we have outlined, all those kind of things, right? There's a certain agreement you go into when you are going into a coach-client relationship. And this agreement is built on a mutual agreement. That's why we also have client contracts where everything is highlighted and listed, right, really clarified so that the client knows what they get themselves into, and that also secures us, right? And it also makes it very clear how the coaching actually goes down. So that doesn't mean that we are dictating, but to make it possible that each and every client of ours gets the highest amount of quality, and we have to have some guidelines and some rules in check, because otherwise, if it's just an anarchic state or so, things wouldn't work out. And in a pretty short time, we would just not be able to do that anymore, right? And thus, I think it is one of the most frustrating things when someone is not respecting the rules and guidelines, and thus also not respecting your time, because that also implies that they are not respecting all the other clients there, and they think that they can allow themselves everything. And that is a simple no-go. And that doesn't work in any other business, right? In any other relationship, at least not if it's a mutual relationship and not built on something like, I don't know, what's it called again here? 50 Shades of Grey. You've watched
Dominatrix.
documentary. Yeah, exactly. If it's something like that, okay, that's an exception, but this isn't how our coaching works. We want to build a relationship with our clients, and this is only possible when there's a mutual respect for another. And this is the most frustrating and the most challenging, probably at the same time, because then it's becoming so hard to communicate. Because if that's the foundation where you start your relationship off from, well, it's really hard to turn it around then. So probably also then the most challenging thing. But yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe you have something else that I'm then totally agreeing with as well.
Yeah, I agree. I can't say any more. You explained it really well. That is incredibly frustrating. What I would also say, and challenging at the same time. I think something I have to find both challenging and frustrating is when you have a client and they aren't adhering and there's no apparent reason for it. And it's difficult, therefore, at that time, because quite often, and I would put it on myself, if a client isn't adhering, it's definitely not automatically their fault. No way. But if you're doing everything as a coach to allow them and get them to adhere and asking the right questions and communicating with them effectively, and still you're struggling to get them to adhere, it can be super difficult. So I haven't had it that often, but there are times at which I have good, high quality clients with great communication, but they don't adhere. I don't really know why. And I've tried many, many things to try and get that discussion, to try and get that out of them. And it might just be that they're not in a place for coaching right now, which I think does happen. So that's ultimately so frustrating, because you know they want it and you can help them. It's just right now they're not in a position to adhere to the protocol. So that's also incredibly challenging and frustrating. And then the only other thing that I think I find really, again, challenging and frustrating is when clients, maybe something happens outside of their control and outside of your control, and neither of you can do anything about it. So something like, I don't know, there might have been, they could have been kind of in some financial difficulty, and it's just not related to the coaching, it's not related to their training, and therefore they can't kind of continue. Or it might be that, I don't know, someone in their life has passed away, and it's just horrible. And it is challenging because you feel for that person so much. These sort of things, or even like, say, an injury. You've done everything under the sun to try and prevent an injury happening, but they come out of nowhere sometimes, despite what you do, not because of what you do. And as a personal trainer, it's out of our scope of practice to know exactly what to do in that scenario. So again, it's really challenging and frustrating to see that happen, because you care so much for your client, and being injured is one of the worst things that can happen for a coach. So those are the only ones I'd really add to yours. It looks like you're struggling to get that off.
No, I totally agree with everything you said there, because I just needed to think that over the past 2 to 3 years, I had actually many people who added either that someone passed away, or they lost their job but stuck around with the coaching, which is like, wow, crazy, right? I also had a lot of clients who just dropped out because they couldn't afford it anymore. But what I've been thinking when you've been saying like maybe they aren't in a position to be coached because they can't adhere at the moment, this is totally something I agree as well with. And this is then always where I'm just saying like, okay, sorry, but what are you doing here at the moment?
Mm-hmm.
And this is not to offend the client or to judge them or so, but it's more like just a realistic thing or showing them the reality of being like, hey, mate, right now you're pissing away money.
Yeah.
What you could do is just like pick up your purse, get like, I don't know, $200 out of it, put it in your hands, get a lighter and just put it on fire, right? And throw it out the window. It is kind of the same what you're doing. It is even worse, actually, because you're also pissing away your time in doing the check-ins, right? So you're not only pissing away money, but also pissing away time. So just be honest with yourself. Is it actually truly something that you want at the moment? And if not, that's absolutely fine, because that doesn't mean that you will never want it for the rest of your life. But maybe you're right now not in the situation where you really can commit to what is required from you. Right, but then be absolutely true with yourself instead of just wasting both of your times. Because me as a coach, it's like you said, it's so frustrating when I can't help my clients. And of course, I can wholeheartedly admit that sometimes I can't. It's simply not possible. Sometimes it is because it's either not working out in a relationship, so you can't get along with each other. Had some clients where that was the case. Not always the case, or not really frequently, but I have like one name that pops to my mind, for example, where that just sticks in the back of my mind. And I just remember that moment, and it simply didn't work out, but that's just life. You can't get along with everyone in your environment in your life. And sometimes it's just like, if you can't help them due to your methodologies or due to your knowledge and experience, and that is limited, right? This is why experience and knowledge can be so valuable, because if you have 20 years under your belt, you probably have seen so much more than us who are in the game since like 3, 4, 5 years or so. There are limitations. And if you then can't really help those people, it's so frustrating and also a little bit demotivating. But what's more frustrating is that you try everything you can and it's not working because the client just doesn't do what you are prescribing them. And then, of course, it can't work out, right? Mm-hmm. Just wanted to also add my take on that one, because I think it's such a good point you brought up there.
Cool. No, I think that was a good initial point, and it makes complete sense. Awesome. Next question.
Mm-hmm.
So this is from Ariana. There we go. Ariana. I'm pretty sure that's correct. So I would say this is a female name, isn't it? Ariana.
Yeah. I knew someone, she was from Perth. She moved to London. Really beautiful girl. And she was a musician, so also beautiful voice. She's now living in London together with her boyfriend and a dog.
Don't sound creepy at all, Pascal.
Yeah. So maybe you want to Google that. Beautiful girl from Perth, London musician with boyfriend and dog. I mean, maybe you find something. And I could share with you guys another detail, but I will save that for another time.
Oh, damn. Now everyone's Googling at least to find the detail. So Ariana says, when it comes to cutting, easily the worst thing for me is being cold constantly. Is this always inevitable while maintaining a lower body fat percentage / cutting? And is there any way to lessen the effects it has? Or am I alone and just being a baby when it comes to the cold? So shall I start? Or,
yes, please.
Okay.
I would just make a little bit of fun, but that's not to be mean or something like that, but it's just like what popped to my mind.
Say it now. You got it.
I mean, she was asking, and is there any way to lessen the effects it has? Put on some warm clothing and move to Australia or something like that.
Get back to Perth.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So
I also heard that Perth has the most beautiful beaches, but it was actually her who told me, so I don't know how much to believe in that fact.
So Ariana, you're moving to Perth and you're going to lie on a beach and you're going to get hot and tanned. So I think this is an interesting question because I think from my understanding, and this is just one of those, it could be a wives' tale, an old wives' tale. Females are generally colder. I don't know if this is just the case. I don't know if there's any biological rationale behind it. It might be that generally their metabolic rate is slower, so they end up, but like just your metabolism is less thermogenesis, you're just colder. But this is generally why when you're cutting, your actual temperature goes down. It isn't because, oh, you're leaner, you have less body fat, so you have less kind of, what's it called? What's it called? Insulation. That's the one. I was like, insulin? No, insulation. So it's not because of that. That's not going to be the wild difference because these are people coming from like, I don't know, as a female, 25 to 20% or something. It's 5%. It's not going to be night and day. It is your metabolism ramping down, thermogenesis, heat. So you're just cooling yourself down because the body's ramping down. This is one of the metabolic adaptations that we just see. And it is kind of inevitable when you are somewhat dieting and cutting. And I think probably if you're maintaining a lower body fat percentage, at least for a time, when your body's kind of getting used to this settling point, probably it's still ramped down slightly. But over time, it would probably heat up, I imagine. I don't imagine it's a permanent state that you've be in, assuming it's not super low body fat percentages. We're talking like you're not trying to maintain 5% as a male or like 10% or 12% as a female. You're more so like up at like 20% and 15% or like, I don't know, 12 and 18%, something like that. That's like a reasonable lean level. I imagine if you settled there for long enough, you'd end up normalizing and feeling warm again. So I don't think I've necessarily answered the question. I think it's just one of those adaptive thermogenesis aspects of dieting. And just like every other one, to lessen the effects, you diet not too long, not too hard. You have diet breaks, these sort of aspects. There's nothing unique, I don't think, apart from, like Pascal said, move to Perth, go on a beach, put a jumper on, these sort of things. Take some DMP. Do not do that one. That's
do
the
not
least
do that,
favorable
please.
one.
Yeah, actually, do not do that. Yeah.
Rub on some deep heat. Avoid the eyes and the genitals.
Oh, is that cream for like muscle pain and stuff like that?
That
is actually quite nice.
Spicy.
Yeah, it is super, super hot. But it's actually pretty cool to have it on. I don't know what it is. Also because you call me weird. No, I'm actually weird. I know that. But it actually smells also a little bit nice.
Yeah, it's like toothpaste.
Is it for you?
Minty.
For me, it's more like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. A little bit, yeah.
That's the smell of toothpaste, isn't it? Mint? What do you have? Bubblegum flavored?
I never have. Like, yeah, I'm always using the toothpaste from Hugo, which just tastes like strawberries.
Brilliant,
amazing. You should have seen him actually brushing his teeth. He's always like sucking on the toothbrush.
Oh no!
And slurping it up, the toothbrush. But anyway, I have actually nothing more to add there, other than just jokes and nothing to add any kind of value. So yeah, I think you've covered it all there. And sorry, Ariana, that I was so unhelpful in that situation.
Let's go to the next question.
Yeah.
So this one is from Nina, and she has asked, firstly, thanks for answering my question at the beginning of the year regarding new job, change to workout routine, and coffee consumption.
Oh, yeah.
I have taken everything on board and going well. My question is there such a thing as a swayback? I saw this reference by an online PT as a source for her struggling to get abs as her stomach pops out as a result. I have a very pert backside. Husband reckons he can rest his drink on it. Eye roll. Love that. I'm lean, good muscle tone, and eat well and train hard, but my tummy area never seems to really change. Always a little Joey pouch, swayback or question mark. Love you guys. Best podcast out there.
Yeah, so funny enough, I have the same thing, that my lower belly always sticks out a little bit. but I don't think, to be honest, with everything you find online with the anterior pelvic tilt, that this is actually the cause for that, to be quite honest, because I've been thinking about that. I've been looking into that a lot due to especially my hip area. I always thought that my hip was also aggravated in pain and damaged because of anterior pelvic tilt. But that wasn't actually the case. Posterior pelvic tilt. Posterior. Anterior?
To the rear.
Posterior. Posterior.
Donald Duck butt.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Posterior pelvic tilt. And all the internet pages like what is it called? WebMD and stuff like that is actually telling you then that you have like tight psoas muscles so the hip flexor area, you need to actually roll it out, get a little bit more mobile there, do a little bit of hip loosening routines. Did it all back in 2014, 15, because I always felt a pinching sensation in my hip area and my lower belly was sticking out all the time. But to be honest, I think for many, many people, it's just a fat distribution kind of thing. I think that as soon as you start to really get lean, it is going away, that the lower belly is dissipating. And when you then have like a Donald Duck body position, right, where the glutes are really popping out or being stuck out and the stomach is just rounded forward, I think probably you perceive it much more severe or significant than anyone else in your environment. And from you looking down, of course, the belly then pops out. But looking from the side, maybe that's not even the case when you're really lean. But when you carry a little bit of body fat, maybe it's just the body fat distribution, because most of the time, I don't think that the thing with the psoas muscles being super tight is actually the cause for that, to be honest. But at the same time, small disclaimer, I'm no physiotherapist or something like that. So take it with a little bit of grain of salt. But I would even assume that if you are asking someone like Dean Somerset or Quinn Hannock, they would tell you the same thing. But that would be only an assumption, so maybe they won't.
A brilliant answer. I don't really have much more to add to that, apart from, I think, for us to confirm Pascal's comments there, I think seeing a picture like of your physique to reveal kind of what that is exactly that you're describing would allow us then to either confirm our thoughts or maybe recommend that it is something else that you maybe have to strengthen a certain area. I'd never heard of Swayback, so you did a good job on answering that.
Yeah, never did so too, but then everything else was just like really clear to me what it is she's talking about. And I would just call it posterior pelvic tilt.
Yeah, I think what your answer is exactly how I would frame it as well from what she's written there. So, Nina, it might just be that you need to get lean, or I imagine the little bit that you have there, like Pascal said, is probably very little, and it isn't something to be concerned about.
Just something that I've totally forgotten to mention. Sometimes it's just our build. Sometimes your hip bone structure is actually forcing you to that position where the hip bones are just tilted that way, which then causes your lower your lower back to have some lordosis going on, which is perhaps a little bit more exaggerated with you, but then it's just your body composition. But without any kind of pictures, it's always hard to really tell whether it is truly exaggerated or whether it's just something that is perceived that way, but it's not really a big issue or so.
Well, I don't know if this is true, but if it's not causing her pain or discomfort, I imagine then it isn't something that she needs to be concerned about, and it is what we've described. I imagine if it is causing pain and discomfort, then there probably is something more to it that's going on, and see a decent physio, or maybe have an online consult with like Quinn Hannock, who we both would highly recommend. Dean Somerset is also my go-to. Next question.
Yeah, let's go.
Sweet. So this is from Jake, and he said, what is a re-sensitization mesocycle, and why is it recommended we eat out maintenance during it?
I'm wondering whether this is one of my old clients. Okay, Jake is a pretty common name, especially in Australia, right?
Yeah, is he from Australia?
I don't know, but so my old client, he was from Australia, and do know a couple of people who are living in Australia that are actually called Jake. So I'm just wondering, because the last time he asked a question, he was actually putting his last name into that one as well. So maybe he didn't, because I think I've been with him through a resensitization phase. So don't know if that's one of my old clients. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Do you want to go?
Yeah, I guess so. So a resensitization mesocycle. So I guess, what is a resensitization mesocycle? To answer that question first, so we call this a primer phase. Really, it's just terminology. It's a period at maintenance. So in someone's physique development, at least, it's essentially what you can call as like the stopover, the night of maybe you're trying to do a long journey and you're refueling along the way with the car. You're stopping off and getting more petrol. You're having a bit of downtime. You're getting a coffee. This is like your deload, and then you're going for more time. And after a while, you get to a point where just it's unsustainable to keep going. You're really tired. You need to sleep. And this is the stopover. This is like a longer period of time where you're just looking to maintain things. So that's it in it as like an analogy. So this is a mesocycle that is normally a month in length, typically. It's focusing on really getting against or resensitizing you to higher volume training again. So something that happens as we train with higher and higher volumes is we see a buildup of the repeated bout effect, which initially is great. And then we also get adaptive resistance. So like any biological system, the longer you push in a certain direction, the more it pushes back and the harder it pushes back. So we see this with loads of things. If you are trying to diet, the longer you diet for, the harder your body fights you. And eventually you need to take a break, or you just end up maintaining at like a really horrendously low intake or something like that. So this is about kind of really ensuring we're getting rid of a lot of those adaptive resistance to anabolism, essentially. So as we train with higher volume over a longer course of time, we probably get to a point at which we can no longer progressively overload sustainably with volume. That probably settles in to a certain extent. We also see a transition towards slower twitch muscle fiber types. So these are less hypertrophic. So this isn't great scenario to be in. They're more endurance based because we've been training high volume for a long period of time. We also see a rise in AMP kinase and a down regulation in mTOR. I don't know a lot about these things. I just know that happens over time. So we're seeing a lot of things that's putting us in. We also see a kind of niggles and injuries, overuse injuries coming up, which is a big component of why a primer phase is effective, because it helps kind of attack against that and save our joints and everything so we can keep training for a long, long time. So essentially that's what it's resensitizing against, so that when we come out, we're primed in terms of increasing our kind of hypertrophic response, in that we start to get pumps again because like mTOR is in a good place, AMP kinase is in a better place. We start to see we're getting sore again, potentially muscle damage is more frequent because we've let things settle essentially, and you're training at just maintenance volume. So you're just training at a really low amount, which might be up to like 1/3 of what you've been averagely training at to maximize muscle hypertrophy. So this is super low and you can do that. And this is why you eat at maintenance, because you're just maintaining your training volume. You aren't seeking muscle growth. So if you were to eat in a surplus, sure, you'd recover really well in terms of just physiologically, but you'd also pack on fat that wouldn't be required. So I think I summarized that okay.
Yeah. No, that was amazing. And nothing really to add there. It's just like, I've been doing a lot of primer phases already with a lot of clients, and the results right after just a short period of maintenance are tremendous. Sure, you could then always I know that there's the counter argument of, okay, when you are doing a primer phase and you are doing a low volume block, if you were to train or continue doing a high volume training, wouldn't the effects that you get from a primer phase afterwards outweigh that you've been training over the time period the entire time, right? So you get a head start, but then due to adaptive resistance, the other block then catches up again or so after a while. And I think that having a resensitization phase and seeing just the results of it and the responses of each and every individual, and keeping in mind that adaptive resistance is just a thing, how severe it is actually. It's still a little bit unclear, and whether a resensitization phase is necessary is also up for debate. But I can tell you for sure that each and every one of my clients comes back after a prana phase, and with the same amount of volume as they've done in the last macro cycle at the beginning, they are now again getting really sore, right? And yes, soreness is not always the best indicator, but if you are then thinking about the repeat about effect and all that kind of stuff, and accumulating volume over time and adapting to that, thinking about that you're now being able to get the same or even a better response from the body in terms of metabolic disruption with the same amount of volume as you've done in the past, like volume in the sense of hard sets, not in the overall tonnage. Hopefully you're now doing a little bit more tonnage because you got stronger over time. It's just amazing to see, and for me a testament that this is just so beneficial. Also, when you're keeping in mind that soft tissue work, the repetition in regards to the soft tissues and also muscle damage and all that kind of stuff. When you're always doing the same stuff over and over in the same rep range repetitively, things will wear down. And the prana phase is just the perfect opportunity to just reset basically your entire system.
I think of it many ways and great additional points. And I concur when I've done it with clients and even myself, apprehensive because we're people who want to just keep moving forward in a direction. And what you have to remember is it's not a step backwards by any means. It's a step sideways to allow you to keep stepping strides forwards. And for longevity, it's so great. And we've all been there when we've just been training and you're going through the motions. You're getting to a point at which you're just you might even get injured, or you might see that you're just your performance is plateauing, you're stale. And a lot of the time, a way to get around staleness is you introduce novelty. Maybe it's an increased repetition range, you increase pump sets or metabolite work, you change your exercises. But after a while, you're just resistant to hypertrophy, to some, at least to quite a large scale, and you're just going to be tricking along. And so by having a lower volume phase, you just reset things, which we're seeing. And it was funny because obviously I've been doing quite a bit of research into it and looking over who utilizes such an approach. Brian Haycock has what's it called? Strategic deconditioning. Greg Nichols did his article on grow like a new lifter again. And he said a lot of the things in there, he doesn't necessarily feel as strongly about them, but he still thinks it's a very viable method, especially for more advanced trainees. He thinks it could be really powerful. Mike Israetel, Brad Schoenfeld, Andy Galpin. Oh, I didn't realize Andy did as well. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, he's always talking about
that's true. I remember on the podcast he did.
Non-specificity for specificity.
Yeah.
Which sounds counterintuitive at first, but doing something completely else for the purpose of your specific task.
Yeah. Absolutely love that. And I need to include that in my research. And who else does it? Who was it? The Mountain Dog. I've forgotten his actual name.
John Meadows.
John Meadows. So after his competition seasons, he'd take 2 to 4 weeks away from training, and he'd always say he'd come back even better. Kevin Levrone obviously took ages off and then came back even better.
It's not bodybuilding and stuff, but I always found it so crazy to hear when Ilya Ilin finished the London 2014 Olympic Games. Was it 16? 14? 16? Doesn't matter. One of the Olympic Games in London. He took 6 months away from Olympic weightlifting, just rowing, just a little bit of swimming, and then he came back 2 years later and crushed some new records.
Yeah.
Took 6 months off. It's crazy to me.
So I think there's just a lot of mechanistic data supporting such an approach. Wow. There's a lot of smart people like Brad Schoenfeld, within his max muscle plan, he has a strength phase of low volumes. So James Krieger's doing cyclical volumes as well. It just seems to make a lot of sense. And I think so many people are kind of against it because they're just scared of doing such a thing and they don't want to settle there. But every time I've done it, like I say, it can be really, really powerful. So I think we've sold it.
Yeah. Should we do one more question?
Let's get one
because
more.
It's just a good one.
Oh, is it? So it's from Jake again. Hey, Steve.
I don't know if it's Jake again.
I assume it's the same Jake. I don't know. It could be a new Jake.
Maybe it's a different. Yeah, totally.
Hey, Steve, I would love to hear what your and whoever you're interviewing take is on vaping, weed, I found it doesn't impact my cardio fitness / work capacity compared to smoking for improved sleep and recovery whilst massing or cutting. Thanks, man. Love all the work you do. So I'm going to ask you, what is your take on vaping weed, Pascal?
So, by the way, Jake, if you haven't noticed so far,
he's high as a kite.
Steve is always interviewing me on a week-to-week basis when it comes to the Improvement Season podcast, for which you've actually put in a question. So maybe the vaping of the weed was a little bit too much over the past couple of days. But other than that, so I have to take it from two different perspectives. What my take is on vaping first, right? It's not just about vaping weed, or it's more so about vaping, because vaping and the technology behind it is actually quite a new one, and we still have no research, long-term research about it. So my father-in-law is actually vaping as well, and I don't fucking want that he is vaping in front of Hugo, because he is someone, and this is the majority of people out there who are vaping, they are justifying their behavior with saying, oh, it is so much healthier than smoking. Do you really believe that inhaling an external substance in the form of fog or whatever it is you're inhaling there, like, is actually something good? Do you really believe that? I have a really hard time to actually believe that vaping something like that, unless it's just like pure air, is actually a beneficial thing. I really have a hard time believing that. So only because there are no studies out there that show that vaping is actually like detrimental, it's just probably because there are no long-term studies on that one, which then can actually lead or correlate that with vaping. And that was the same back in the 50s and 60s with smoking cigarettes. And everyone was doing that. And all of a sudden, people were just getting cancer all over the world. And there were no long-term studies at first as well, until people just got more and more ill because everyone was smoking, even teenagers and all that kind of stuff, right? Like 60s, 70s, especially in the US, like everyone was smoking, right? And maybe it will turn out to be the same thing with vaping, that we can't right now know for sure whether it doesn't have that much of a detrimental effect or not. Also, just considering how much you're inhaling. You see it all the time. I don't know, Steve, if you've seen it on the streets, but when they are inhaling so much more than just with a normal cigarette inhale, right? With one single inhaler, right? Because it's so much more efficient and all that kind of stuff. I, once again, have a really hard time believing that this isn't detrimental. I could be completely wrong. Maybe there will be some studies in the future, like not just one or two studies, but actually like 20, 30 studies showing that it is actually not detrimental at all. But just my intuition tells me no at the moment. So that being said, vaping weed, sure, I don't think that now weed is included as well. It has any more beneficial, it is more beneficial than just vaping, like whatever. I don't know. I don't even know what it is you're exactly inhaling there. So maybe I'm making too quick of any kind of judgments here, but I would assume that there's still some nicotine included there in normal.
I didn't know you could vape weed.
Yeah, this is something that you can do. I know that in California, many people are doing it with a normal weed for medical purposes and stuff like that. But anyway, so just considering what I said here in regards to normal vaping, I have a really hard time that vaping weed is just full of pros. Possibly there may be some good outcomes in regards to health. I mean, I'm not the most well-versed when it comes to marijuana research out there, but I know that there are a couple of studies that are showing benefits, especially like for neurological patients or neurological conditions or so. So maybe there is something beneficial to that, but also here I have a hard time thinking that the sleep that you're getting is truly improved and the recovery is truly improved, probably it's something like or like under alcohol. I would just assume that. Just want to be very clear that it's just an assumption. I would assume that it is same as alcohol, that you perceive it to be deeper and you perceive it to be a better and more improved sleep, but in reality you're just under narcotics, or you're just like fully blacked out, and this is the reason why you perceive it as such. But in reality the body is still fighting against a external substance that is sitting in your in your system and possibly fighting that. So I don't know. I'm just really skeptical to think that it may be beneficial. And also when we are just taking a look at something like a CBD oil, Miguel did a fantastic write-up on our website, a fantastic article that is covering that, is looking at the current research. There's not a lot of research that is actually taking a look at that, but enough to actually get some or make somewhat of an assumption at the moment. You can always change, right, with more research, but same there. There wasn't any kind of results where they've seen better results in regards to recovery or better sleep or so.
I think that was really well answered. I don't have a lot to add at all. I have the same skepticism as what Pascal has there. The only things I would say, and the value I think I have to add here, is I don't know enough about weed. I don't know enough about vaping. What I do know is that the best bodybuilders who are all about maximizing recovery aren't heavily smoking weed. It's not something I know is like a big part of their protocol. I don't know. Maybe it is. I'm not aware of it. At least the natural guys who I follow, I'm not aware that a lot of them are regularly smoking weed. I know Alberto does it like once a week or something, but I don't think many other people are. And then from looking at sleep researchers I trust, so Matthew Walker, Greg Potter, Dan Pardy, these guys, I not once seen them recommending someone to smoke weed for better enhanced sleep. This makes me skeptical.
I don't know, maybe this is more of a ethical thing that they aren't allowed to.
Maybe.
Because they are living in a country where it's just not legal. And
where is it legal?
In the US, it is only in California as far as I know. Maybe something has changed over the last couple of months or so. As far as I know, it's only in California. So when they are, I don't know, specifically talking in America, that they can't really promote that because it's only legal in one state. Don't know if that's really true that the case. It is the same with when you are reading something like that. No one ever will recommend you taking some medication or so, or a possible legal substance in any other country, because then I think maybe you're just putting yourself out to get sued or so. Possibly when you recommend that, someone is not aware of it's being illegal in that country, hears it or reads it in a magazine, in a book or so, goes out, buys it from somewhere, and then is actually, I don't know, punished for that because they bought something. I don't know. I don't know enough about the legal system to actually say anything about that, but I would assume that it's probably just to secure themselves. So possibly they would recommend it if it were legal in every country or so.
Maybe. But yeah, I haven't seen them recommend it, at least. I'm not sure I've even seen them talk about it. At least I think Matthew is quite, not anti, but he's very low supplement in terms of he doesn't think a lot of them are going to be doing a whole lot, and probably a lot of them you don't want to be taking long term. Melatonin is about the only one they're like, yeah, this is one that actually does something.
And even there, I mean, Matthew Walker gets a lot of flack for the recommendations he's putting out when it comes to the dosage of melatonin. And yeah, already there you want to be a little bit
I struggle with that sometimes because I'm like, I wish I could talk to him because I'd like, I don't know, because he is like sleep research, like for him to put out a recommendation, it means a lot. So it's like, why is there a reason he's discounting that research? Is it because anecdotally he's just seen people do way better when they're on higher? It's hard, isn't it? It's just like, you see someone like, I don't know, Ian McCarthy. You're not a sleep researcher. This guy's been in the field. He's doing the research. And
this is what I was thinking about. So there was a good write-up in regards to dosages and the overall literature and all that kind of stuff. But I basically said to Ian, because I commented on that post he made, like, okay, when you are making claims like Matthew Walker, then you better know the literature and all that kind of stuff. And I basically reached out to him. You can find the comment over on Facebook and saying like, okay, have you even read his work? And why aren't you just reaching out to him? Because most researchers out there are happy to actually talk about stuff, right? And he basically then came back a little bit snappy and said like, okay, if you're putting out a book and if you put yourself out there, you need to actually be very careful with the recommendations you're putting out there, and it is in his responsibility to actually give out the right recommendations and all that kind of stuff. But if you don't know the context, and if you each and every individual interprets research differently, and maybe Matthew Walker did his research, I would assume that he did because he's a professor at a university on sleep research, all that kind of stuff. He's doing and conducting research, so I would assume that he is actually very well aware of the literature, and maybe he has a different interpretation of everything. And so totally agree. Yeah, totally agree that I'm definitely no sleep researcher, so it's not up to me to read the science out there and be like super critical to someone who's actually conducting a lot of research. I can have my doubts, but then I can actually try to contact them and try to just ask them what's the reasoning behind that. And if they are then not willing to share their insights, then you can be even more so critical about it, right? But not even having talked to that individual and then not giving them the benefits of the doubt, it's just like a little bit too far-fetched in my opinion.
Cool. Awesome. We have been over an hour again. We crushed it.
One more thing, just to end it here. Jake, I just want to let you know, I have no problem with you smoking weed or having the decision of vaping. It is just my opinion in regards to vaping, what I think about it, but I don't care if someone is actually taking all the cocaine in the world, right, and is living a good life and is treating every other person in this environment good, then I don't have a problem with that as well, right? So go ahead and vape all the weed there is, and I'm still super grateful that you are supporting us and all that kind of stuff. This is just something I wanted to throw out there because I think that it could have made the impression that I was
can feel personal.
Attacking Jake and his decision on vaping and taking weed.
Absolutely. No, I think that was good to add. Really good to add, actually, because I wouldn't have thought of it. But yeah, great. Let's leave it there.
Yeah, cool.
Guys, thank you for listening as always. If you do want to submit questions, as it might not always be clear, you can join our email list, which is probably attached below. I think it is attached below, or at least you can find it on our website. And yeah, get your questions in there. We do have 196 questions at the moment, and we're on 122. So we need to start not asking you for your questions.
Or we need to start to not ramble all the time for half an hour at the beginning.
Or have a separate place where we maybe answer your questions for a small fee.
Maybe.
Cheers, guys. We'll catch you soon.
Cheers.